Welcome one, welcome all to this week's episode of Echo from the Buttes. I'm your host, Tom Hardon, standing in for David Howman. Unfortunately, dealing with some technical difficulties tonight, so you guys will have to deal with me this week. With me, I have Andrew Hayslett and Austen Bundy, and we are at Big 12 opening week for the Sun Devils, and big test coming up this week on the road in Waco. Uh, Sun Devils are historically, when traveling east, not the best as we've already seen this week. But this week presents some interesting opportunities. And Andrew, you've been on the ground at practice this week. What have you seen from the team as they start to prepare for this road game?
Offensively, my biggest takeaway is that compared to last week they used the same kind of personnel on the offensive ones. This week couldn't be further different. I think maybe over a dozen guys probably got reps with Sam Levitt across your running back, tight ends, and receivers. So that's one thing I'm kind of looking for offensively is, okay, we know Jordan Tyson's Jordan Tyson. We know the running backs are efficient. We know that Shaman's good. He told me earlier on, what was that, Tuesday, he feels he's the best tight end in the country. And we know all that. What we have been saying is still who is looking to take the rest. I know a lot of people before the season said, "Oh, Jalen Moss is going to be one of those guys," and Jalen Moss has been hampered by injury and now illness, so I believe is going to be out for Saturday's game. I believe that was officially confirmed. I don't know, but if he's at best he's questionable, so I doubt he'll get a lot of the playing time. So that leaves Malik McLean. You've got Jordan or Noble Johnson, your Kamari Andersons, all those guys looking to say, "Hey, we can step up." And can that be shown defensively? Defense looks solid as always. We know Xavier Alford is going to be out. That's what Dillingham said yesterday on Wednesday, and he's going to be out for a long time, so we'll see how Boogie Wilson can take the step up to being the full-time second safety alongside Ghost Rouser. Absolutely just great nicknames back in the safety department, Boogie and Ghost. I'd be hard-pressed to find a better duo than that in terms of nicknames. But hopefully, if you're a Sun Devils fan, you'll say, hopefully they can play as good as their nicknames, right? So those are kind of my top two things to just take away from practice.
Well, it's a very next man up mentality that we're getting this week because new this season, the Big 12 is mandating that for all conference games, teams put out injury reports leading up to the Friday night before the game, or in the case of a Friday night game, it would be the Thursday night. And we've got a lot of names listed on that injury report. In addition to Xavier and Jalen Moss, Ghost Rouser is even listed on the injury report. So this is going to be a big test for the depth of this team and how well they can overcome all these bangs and bruises that are going up and down the roster.
Absolutely. There's as someone who was at practice and saw everything, I was surprised to see as many names on the injury report that we saw. I know there's always going to be a few surprises, but there are half a dozen guys that I said, "Oh wow, you're on the injury report." That's surprising to me. I think a lot of those guys you see in the questionable list are going to play. That's just my pure speculation. I could be totally wrong. I could be totally right. I don't know, but I would say the majority of those guys on the questionable report will play. That's like I said, pure speculation. I don't know what the doctors are saying. I don't know everything that's going on within the team. I just can go by what I saw in the 2 days of practice that I was at and what everyone's had to say, which is obviously they're not going to spill all their secrets, but yeah.
How many of those guys did you see doing activities, or what kind of activities, if at all, were the guys on the questionable side of the injury report, were they doing? Does that give any indication as to how they may be lining up going into Saturday, or were any of these guys off to the side not doing much?
Yeah, there are some guys off to the side, and there are some guys practicing in full. But I can't really say what if you're practicing in full doesn't really mean anything. Zach Swanson, for instance, I thought he was going to play week one. He looked ready to me, based off what I saw in practice, and he obviously hasn't played. I think he'll play, but I don't know. That's what I've been saying the past few weeks in my head. So I can only look at so much. Yeah, there's guys uh, I think we'll see play. I would tend to believe a lot of those guys will play. I believe I saw CJ fight on that list. That was one of those things like, oh, okay. So it's just hard to say anything right now.
Now, with this being the first time that the conference has mandated injury reports, I wonder if this is more a case of Kenny being a little bit overly cautious by listing some of these guys, and then later on in the week, with tomorrow's final report, would he come back and say, a lot of these guys who are listed as probable, we're going to take them off the report. We were just hedging our bets. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, there could be a little bit of gamesmanship there too. I mean, you put enough of these guys on as questionable. I mean, they're only required to put the report out, right? It doesn't necessarily have to accurately reflect who's actually injured and who's potentially questionable type of deal. They could put as many guys as they want as questionable that are potentially doing things for maintenance, or like Andrew said, could still be practicing fully, and either they're going to go or they're not going to go. So there might be a little bit of gamesmanship there, because these are public, and Baylor, I'm sure, is looking at what guys are probable and what guys they're going to have to scheme against, and which ones they may get a break from.
I know Kenny. I think it was Wednesday, where he said there's no gamesmanship being played. There could be gamesmanship in that statement. I don't know Kenny well enough to say, oh, there was or there wasn't. But regardless, that is what he said to everyone. He also said that this injury report doesn't change anything in what he's doing. So I would tend to believe he's just being a little cautious rather than trying to do any gamesmanship. But again, I could be wrong. I'm not a medical expert. The only thing I really know well is what's in my body, and quite frankly, that doesn't really matter what the Sun Devils are going to do this Saturday. So,
well, I don't know. They might need you to suit up if enough guys go down.
I'd probably be one of the last people they want, because all I am is tall, not really super athletic or anything. So, yeah, I don't know what position I play.
Well, in my mind, when I think compared to the NFL injury reports, I could be wrong on this, but I believe that tomorrow night's report would be the final report on who's going to dress, who's not going to dress, barring anything that happens off the field or during warm-ups before kickoff on Saturday. So, we'll see what happens when the updated report comes, and who's still on the list, who's not, and we go from there. But looking ahead to the game on Saturday, Baylor on offense, and I broke this down earlier this week, they are, I would say they're a bit of an air raid light offense. And, Andrew and Austen, I don't know how much you guys have dug into what their offensive scheme looks like, but, these guys are going to stretch the field a lot, and it's going to be even more of a passing attack than we've seen from Mississippi State and Texas State. Both those teams ran the veer and shoot offense. Baylor runs I guess a little bit of a hybrid between the air raid and the veer and shoot, but they don't quite have the same kind of running game that can complement the receiving game. So it's really going to be on Sawyer Robinson and his core of receivers, of which he's got many, to really be able to drive that attack. And I got to be honest, I don't really love how our secondary, even when healthy, matches up against Baylor's receiving.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I've said it on the last episode of the show. Secondary's my biggest concern heading into the Big 12 play. I had seen Alford limited in practice, which is why I mentioned it in my last week's article 5 Things to Watch, and now knowing that Alfred's going to be out for a while, secondary concern is my biggest concern on what this air raid like offense was. I know that's what I believe it was, either Marcus Arroyo or Kenny Dillingham kind of called it that, and Brian Ward, the defensive coordinator, noted Washington, the running back, is a solid rusher as well. So a lot of things to prepare for again, and I like the Sun Devil rush defense. I think they're very good in that front. It's the pass defense I'm concerned about, especially the defensive backs at the end of the day. I know Dillingham said on Wednesday that he wants to play the best 6 defensive guys that he can for the defensive back unit on every play. So that might be more. You might see more Montana Warren. I don't know if he's been on the injury report. We'll see if he's good to go. That's a guy that could step up. Rodney Dimage as well, corner that's had some good plays so far. I think that's a guy you'll see as well alongside Boogie. I believe Jack Ball as well, the safety. I think he might start to see a little bit more playing time as well, because these corners and safeties aren't always out there on every play. There's a small rotation there, so I do think that's something we can see in the future.
Yeah, you bring up Washington, the running back, and the highlights that I've seen of him, he is great in the tight spaces. Baylor loves to run between the tackles, and Washington can shoot those gaps really well. He's got the quickness in tight spaces and that agility that you want to see out of a running back. But he doesn't have that breakaway speed. So once he gets to the next level, I think that really the opportunity to contain him. He might get chunk yardage of 8 to 10 yards of play, but he's not really going to burn the secondary based on what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, Baylor was one of those teams coming into the season where I noticed a lot of pundits were hyping them up as one of those dark horses in the Big 12. So I'm not, based on what I've seen from them over the last few weeks, I haven't seen that dark horse just yet. But it doesn't mean they don't have the potential, and especially on offense with Sawyer Robertson. He could wake up at any moment and insert himself into the Heisman conversation for all we know. But that's the type of danger I think we're playing with here. And ASU is more than capable of going to Waco and handling Baylor's offense and taking advantage of a mediocre defense. It's all going to come down to mindset. Can they get over the last time they were on the road, which we all saw at Mississippi State? Waco's not an SEC environment, but it's about as close as you can get when it comes to college football. I mean, that's still it's a religion down there still in Texas. So I think it's going to be more mental than it's going to be physical for Arizona State trying to get out of there with a win. If they can shake the demons from that last loss, then I think they're going to be okay.
I think they can. I know Sam Levitt and Marcus Arroyo have done a lot more preparation on offense, which is the big factor with all the noise defense is not really going to combat the noise as much. But offensively, you got to be able to calm down, get your reads and get your checks and everything that you need to do, and then get the play, and then execute the play. So I believe now at this second, Levitt's and Coach Arroyo's second week doing this, they're I think gelling better, which prepares Levitt better, which prepares the entire team better, which sets them up to have a better chance at winning. So I think obviously hindsight's 2020, but I think both of them are saying to themselves, "Oh, I wish we started the year by doing this instead of starting it in week 3 after a loss to Mississippi State, which is a team that they should be losing to." So I think at the end of the day, this offense is way better because of that than what they were 2 weeks ago at Mississippi State. So I think they've woken up. I think that Arizona State has the potential to be a sleeping giant, and I think the giant is waking up inside of them. They want it.
Well, sometimes that's all it takes is an early season loss to really get the team right and force that change in mentality, which, like you said, you don't want to see that be the case, but a wake-up call is a wake-up call. I would rather have it in week 2 rather than week 10, especially if we're fighting for potential championship game berth or college football playoff berth. I want to go back to Baylor's wide receivers. And Robertson has over 1,000 yards passing so far this year, and he's on pace to exceed his mark of over 3,000 yards that he threw last year. And he's got 4 really good targets in Ashton Hawkins, Josh Cameron, Cole Wilson, and Kobe Prentice. These guys are going to stretch the field. They're going to line up 4 wide most every play, and it's going to force the defense to cover a lot of ground. Hopefully, what we can do on defense is not give them anything over the top and drop the secondary back. Drop back, give up the short to medium play, and not get burned on the long play, and hopefully force them to dink and dump down the field and settle for field goals when we can force that, or get some 4th down turnovers and just kind of outplay Baylor at their own game. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I think this Baylor offense will wind up being a boom or bust, possibly, with the potential to stretch the big play. But so that means they're going to be taking a lot of shots, and that obviously opens up the potential for plenty of incompletions, which could lead to 3 and outs. The offense not getting to the rhythm that they want. So I think they're going to put up more points than what Mississippi State or anyone else has this year on the Sun Devil defense, but I don't think it will be over 40 or anything big. I think it'll be somewhat big, but not huge big. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, that's what I'm looking forward to. This is probably going to be a little bit of a shootout, but not a barn burner shootout. It's going to be higher scoring, but not super high scoring. And the defense will have to create 3 and outs, and then big plays, takeaways. We saw 2 fumble recoveries last week against Texas State. I don't think we'll see 2 fumble recoveries. It's can those guys get interceptions at the end of the day? That's the thing I'm circling.
Yeah, I feel like if ASU's defense is going to keep Sawyer Robertson to under 250 yards passing, that's a good night. I think that's going to be a really good night for them. And like Andrew said, it's going to come down to the turnover margin. Even one can change the game in the direction that you need it to, especially if it comes at the right time. But it's going to come down to the secondary stepping in front of routes, frustrating receivers, and the pass rush not giving Robertson enough time to think. If they can do those things, it's going to be a long night for that Baylor offense, especially if they're going to live by the air raid, die by the air raid. I think ASU has exactly what they need. They have the tools to be able to go out there, play their game, and win it. It's just going to come down to execution.
And I've watched about a game and a half worth of Baylor's action this season, and I think last week I think Sawyer Robertson took 4 sacks, and he just brushed him off. Sacks don't bother him. He's able to just dust himself right off and get back at it for the next play. So I think going up against that kind of mentality where he's able to easily move on to the next task at hand, I think that's going to be even more dangerous for us to go up against defensively. But thankfully, on the offensive side of the ball for the Sun Devils, Baylor's got a pretty subpar rushing defense, and I'm saying that we're giving them a little bit more benefit of the doubt. They are ranked about 113th in the nation, giving up almost 190 rushing yards per game. So if I'm Marcus Arroyo, I'm drawing up a very run-heavy offensive scheme. I'm not necessarily taking the ball completely out of Sam's hands, but I want to see Raleigh get the majority of the touches. If Kyson's completely healthy and ready to go, work that tandem, work Kanye into the game, and work the short passes. Don't try and go for the deep passes. Don't try and go shot for shot with Baylor, because we proved in the fourth quarter against Mississippi State that when we are running the ball, we're absolutely controlling the game. And I think that's the one thing that will keep it from being a high-scoring shootout. Much like you, Andrew, I think it's going to be a shootout nonetheless. But I think that we will be able to better control the timing and pace of the game by executing the ground game as we did in the fourth quarter in Starkville, and make it come down to who's got the ball last, and really just make that a priority. Austen, we'll start with you. What do you want to see out of the offense this week?
Minimal mistakes. I mean, during Texas State, we saw minimal mistakes from the offense, which was great. Now it's consistency. Can Sam repeat that performance? Can the running game be even more dominant? I would like to see ASU's running game be prioritized this week, because I feel like everybody in the Big 12 is going to dial in on Jordan Tyson. Everyone's going to dial in on taking away Sam's ability to throw the ball to his best receiver. If the running game can get going, I mean, it's the bread and butter of any good offense in college football. But if the running game is able to dominate, like I say, if they're averaging 4.5 yards, 3.5 yards per carry, you're going to have a good night. You're going to get first downs. You're going to get third and manageables for your quarterback. I think the running game is going to be the focal point of the offense on Saturday, and if they are succeeding in getting across the field without having to throw the ball too many times, I think ASU is going to do what they do best, what Kenny did best last year, which was move down the field and drain a lot of clock on each drive.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. If you were to ask me, Andrew, do you expect the Sun Devils to run the ball a lot on Saturday? I'd ask you, is water wet? Yes.
It's not wet, by the way.
Water makes things wet.
Yes, there you go.
The point being is that they're going to run the ball. It doesn't matter Cam Scadaboo's gone. Instead of you have one guy who can just dominate, you now have 3. And Sam Levitt, he can run the ball as well too. Whether or not you want that, that's the coach's decision. I'd like to see as less of it as possible, but I still think we'll see Levitt run the ball well. We know Raleigh Brown is probably going to be. I think they'll run a tandem with the running backs. I know Raleigh Brown's going to be one of those two. Whether the second guy is featured is going to be Udo or Kyson. I think that depends on how ready Kyson is. Even if Kyson's ready, right, not necessarily ready, but still dressed, I still think we're going to see him a little bit if he's dressed. Even he could be behind Udo, like I said, or he could not be. I don't know. Well, that's kind of up in the air. And then if he's not dressed, I think we'll still see a little bit of Demarius, aka Man Robinson, as well. Nicknames are coming in great tonight, but at the end, I think they're gonna run the ball, pound the rock, like Richard Sherman once said after one of his games that he did on Amazon Prime, run the ball. I think that's what we'll see a lot, just pounding the rock. This is the Sun Devil style. Like it or not, I like it. I think it's working. It's gonna work. And then whenever Levitt throws his 25 or so balls that he's gonna throw about 10 to 12 to Jordan Tyson, 6 to the running backs or so, 7 or 8 to Shaman, and then the other few are gonna go to Malik McLean. A deep shot to Jordan Hamilton will be in there, or Jaron Hamilton rather, and then you might see your Kamari Anderson, AJ Ia, Cameron Harple, Jalen Moss if he's playing. I don't know. Just a few of those other guys targets. Harry Hassman has stood out to me this week in practice. He's had some runs with Sam Levitt and the rest of the ones. I don't know if we'll see him that much, but that's a dude I'd like to see more of. I think he's going to be I think he's going to be the next Jordan Tyson. I think he in 2-3 years is going to be that dude. I truly believe it. From what I've seen in practice, yes, I know it's practice, but dude can make some amazing catches. And that's what Jordan Tyson does really well. And I know Tyson, when I talked to him on Tuesday, he said that he practices these things. I kind of see similar things with Hassman. Just throwing out there, that's a guy who I think is going to break out in a few years' time that I'm looking out for. And we might see sprinkles of him throughout the season, maybe this week in Waco.
Well, as a Shaman appreciator, I definitely approve of your estimated target volume for him, and really hope that's the case. Working those shorter routes for him.
We got to figure out how to get Shaman on the show. This has turned into a mini fan club.
We can put some feelers out and see if we can get him on here. We did get a uniform drop for this week, courtesy of Cole Streeper, and a lot of Sun Devil fans are going to be happy. The Running Sparky is returning to the gold shell on the helmets for this game with the white road jersey and gold pants. Honestly, I love this combo. It's what I grew up watching during the 2000s, and it just screams. It screams Arizona State to me. There's nothing more I can say to that.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Sparky on the dome. I mean, I don't think you can find any Sun Devil fan who doesn't believe Sparky on the dome should be the permanent decal for their helmets going forward. Andrew, you're somebody who doesn't like it?
I don't like it. I love Sparky on the helmet. I love the pitchfork more. It's a 1A and 1B for me. I love Sparky, but I think the pitchfork is really cool. Both logos to me are just something completely different from everyone else that I see. So honestly, in a perfect world, it's 50-50 for me, but I like them both.
Now, are you referring to this week's running Sparky or the Sparky face from a couple weeks ago on the white shells?
The running Sparky. I'm not a huge fan of the Sparky face as much. I think it looks it's one of those where I like I like
It,
the
it,
Sparky with the pitchfork running better. I think that just shows Sparky better, in my opinion.
The running Sparky is more iconic, I think, to the university compared to like if you put his face on the helmet. I always thought it looked like we were not copying Oregon when they would put the duck face on their helmets, but to me it's like the duck face like is iconic enough without his body to know like that's Oregon. But if you put Sparky's face alone on a helmet, I don't think enough people recognize that as ASU. But if you got the running Sparky, people know it because of the pitchfork.
Right.
I enjoy the pitchfork on the helmet at times. I really liked the old from like 2015 to 2019-ish where they enlarged the pitchfork to go across like almost all of the one side of the helmet. I liked that design.
Better than what they currently have.
Yes, the big pitchfork is a lot better than just the regular sized pitchfork they have going across the helmet. I thought it was unique. But yeah, running Sparky still top for me. The one decal I think is so underrated that I think they should use more often is the Sunburst, the ASU in the Sunburst.
yes.
That one, like, I know they only break it out when they're honoring like the 75 team or any of the Fiesta Bowl winners or the Peach Bowl winners. But the Sunburst is extremely underrated for ASU football, and I think they should wear that at least once a year.
Well, it's worth noting that the 75 throwback jerseys will be worn on October 18th against Texas Tech, and there's been no helmet shell released to go along with those jerseys. So let the speculation begin that we might see the Sunburst on the shells. But to go back to the debate between running Sparky and face Sparky, I always thought the face Sparky looked too gimmicky. And like I said earlier in my take, running Sparky, that's a hallmark of watching ASU when I was growing up, and I love having just the Arizona State in all caps across the jerseys again. As I was seeing some of the speculation as to what the uniform combo would be, I saw a callback to, I believe, one of the 2014 alternates that had the more metallic gold color in the helmets and the jerseys, and that's one that I wouldn't mind seeing come back with with Baylor wearing their anthracite jerseys at home on Saturday. That kind of evokes memories of our own anthracite jerseys from that same era. And I know it's two different companies. I believe we were in our Nike years then, and now we're with Adidas, so we're not really going to get those same combinations again. But maybe down the line it would be kind of cool to see those worked in to some degree.
You know what's a shame is when we switched over to Adidas, the fact that the Desert Hammer and Desert Ice combos had to go away because we were cursed in them. We couldn't win a game when we wore those the combination of those uniforms. That was I loved those. Desert Hammer I think was really nice, especially when they went with the copper chrome domes. Those went hard. We could never win a game in them, so they got rid of them.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we just had that great, I think it was like a 3 or 4 year stretch where we had these really unique combinations. We were almost like an Oregon Light with how many combinations they were rolling out. I think we actually, we still duplicated some of our combinations where they still had one brand new one every week, it seemed like.
I was looking back at those because I don't know the Desert Hammer and Desert Ice by what they're called. I just know like, oh, what's that? And like, I liked seeing those when I grew up.
But those were my freshman and sophomore years when they wore those.
I was in my intermediate years between undergrad and grad school, so that's kind of one of those eras where it's just kind of like, I'm not a student, but I'm a fan, so we're just going to roll with it. But enough uniform talk here. One big piece of news that dropped this morning is for the 2026 season, Arizona State and Kansas will be playing in the first ever college football game in London. That game is slated for, I believe it's September 19th at Wembley Stadium in London. From some of the reports I was seeing, I think Austen, you brought it up earlier in our team chat. I think it's due to ongoing renovations at Kansas Stadium. It was if you can take a little more on that.
Yeah, so Kansas, they're going through renovations. They just built a whole brand new stadium, I believe. But they're going through some renovations out there. And apparently, the facility, it's not going to be completed enough to where they would have a full capacity of seats. They would have to severely limit the amount of fans that would be able to be at this game. And I don't know for sure if it meant that like ASU fans couldn't travel period to Kansas because there wouldn't be an away section for them. But there's enough seating limitations to where the Big 12 considered this option to begin with, and I'm a little surprised that this is the game that gets Wembley Stadium. Like, I mean, cool. We get we're like this is going to be a cool experience. But also a little surprised that it was this game that got the nod. I don't know if it was an emergency option that the NCAA just decided, like, okay, great, like, you guys can't play this home game, then we're just going to snag it and throw it at Wembley. I don't know if there were enough programs that didn't like the Ireland games that the Big 12 was like, we'll take it. I mean, considering Iowa State, Kansas State was pretty successful this year. Well, I'm not complaining. It'll be pretty cool to see, but I mean, that's a lot of travel. That's a lot of variables that are going to get thrown in there for Arizona State. We have no idea what the team's going to look like next year. I doubt they're probably not going to have any Jordan Tyson. Sam Levitt might still be around, but that'll be pretty cool. I mean, going to the home of the FA Cup. A lot of World Cup finals have been played there, Euro finals, so it's a pretty historic stadium.
And Sun Devil fans and Manchester United fans are about to get real chummy. You know, it's Sun Devils and the Red Devils.
Yeah. Well, Manchester's not that close to London, so you'll have a lot more Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, Crystal Palace. They'll all get chummy together there.
Well, that shows my knowledge of the Premier League.
Yeah. Couple things to note for me is that this report has been reported by a lot of people, but isn't officially official yet. I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah, I would still tend to believe that this is happening than rather it's not, but there's still a potential that things could fall through. I know TCU and North Carolina are going to be playing the Ireland game in week 0. So this game, I believe, is, if memory serves me, it would be week 3, and ASU. This would be coming off of the game where they played at Texas A&M, and I saw a possible report that would have ASU flying to London after the A&M game and not coming back to Tempe, which would be very interesting to see what they would do for practice and everything like that. I obviously want to be there. If there's a will, there's a way, and there's certainly a will. I hope, cross fingers, I can be there. But regardless, I think this is cool. In my opinion, as long as you're not sacrificing a home game to go play somewhere across the world, it's fine. I would not call it optimal from the Sun Devils' perspective. I think going to Kansas is a lot easier than going to Wembley Stadium in London, England. But I think this is part of the Big 12's initiative in growing the game. Their Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said on the Big 12 media days that the Big 12 is open for business, and this was the type of business he was talking about. He wanted to bring the Big 12 to foreign markets. We'll see what other foreign markets might be in the works. I don't know everything with that exactly, but it is interesting to see college football go globally. I know some of the purists are out there like hate it. I don't. I'm more indifferent whether on that. It's like, okay, cool. I mean, if I can travel, I would that'd be a cool experience. I know if you're a part of the team or band or cheer or whatnot, I think going to England's going to be cool for all of them. But for the rest of us, I don't know. It's just kind of there, for lack of a better word.
Well, I know I've
Yeah,
got my passport at the ready, so ready and raring to go.
yeah, I would consider going, but I am one of those people that's like, I understand we're growing the game, we want it to go international, but at some point I feel like the quality of the product of the game is going to go downhill with the traveling. I mean, obviously, like with the Brazil game for the NFL, I mean, they play in Germany, England, now Spain this year. I feel like we're going to get to a point where they're trying to make fetch happen, and I don't think it's really going to happen where making football an international game. Soccer, I think, is way too big to drown out, even if you're going to try and get a foothold in any of those countries. I think the only countries that might actually bite and like actually grow a significant amount with American football is England and Germany. Germany eats it up. I don't know what's about it, but the Germans love American football. So I feel like if Brett Yormark is looking for any kind of expansion for foreign markets, he's going to have to go to Germany. And I think Big 12 football might be something the Germans have an appetite for.
Well,
I,
to
I'm
your
gonna
point,
add I'm gonna add two more places. One is Mexico, the U.S.'s southern border. I think there could be a market there. I know there's been some games played there before. I know there's a lot of with the Arizona and Arizona State. Those two schools in particular are very close to the border. I, Texas Tech, your Baylor, your Houston, TCU, I think that they could be candidates for that game as well. And I know there's a lot of uh, U.S. influence in Australia as well for U.S. football. You got a few Australian punters, I believe. Mitch Wishnowsky is Australian, and a few in college football as well. I know Nebraska has one, and Arizona State has their own Matt McKenzie. He's Australian as well. So I think those are a couple other potential markets that the Big 12 or college football as a whole might want to break into. And then for the rest of the college sports landscape, it's obviously different with each sport. But I do believe your mark is trying to get other sports to foreign markets as well.
well, and Austin, to your point about Germany being a place that's a hotbed for American football, NFL Europe had a huge presence in Germany for most of their existence. There were consistently teams in Berlin, Rome, Cologne, Frankfurt. So you've got that foundation there. You know, granted, NFL Europe ended almost 20 years ago, but I think your point still stands. You know, the NFL games in Germany have been, at least as far as I can tell, fairly successful, and I don't see those ending anytime soon. You know, we also forget that NFL Europe had a presence in Spain, both in Madrid and Barcelona. So it's not unheard of that the NFL and maybe eventually the NCAA is expanding to other locations within Europe. But I think the worry comes where the NFL has really established their foothold in London. I'm not entirely sure that the NCAA can establish that same foothold, or at least compete with the NFL there. Arizona State does have one of the largest international alumni followings, but I think when you're looking at it outside of the scope of just ASU and looking at the NCAA as a whole, or even just the Big 12 as a whole, I don't think there's quite the demand for an extreme amount of international games. I think what has been established with the Dublin game and with the Bahamas Bowl late in the season, to me, I think that is maybe the extent that college football should go. I really don't want to see that international product get diluted, and that's coming from somebody who attended the first ever Major League Baseball games in London in 2019. That product was not the baseball that I'm used to. It was unique to be at, but it's definitely not a sustainable opportunity. And Major League Baseball had the Paris games planned and had to scrap that opportunity. I believe they're still exploring Australia and Eastern Europe or not Eastern Europe, Eastern Asia for international games. But I think the novelty of international games, and this is across all sport, I think it's getting far too diluted for what the leagues hope that it will be.
Yeah, I think 1, 2, 3 a season is the right amount in terms of each sport. I know NFL has a lot more than London alone. And then you've got MLB. I know they have usually one series out of the country a year, if memory serves me right. On college football now, the two that you've mentioned, Tom, and now this would be the third. And then basketball is something I'm not really into, so you guys might probably know more than me there. I don't think there's been anything foreign. And I know hockey has, I believe they've had a few years where they've kicked off internationally in Europe as well. One more thing I do want to bring up is ASU was originally scheduled to host Hawaii on week 3. So with this game coming in, that would mean that I believe it wound up being that ASU would host Hawaii in week 5 or 6. Those are the two that I've seen tossed around. Obviously, we don't know the schedule in full. But the non-con would look, I believe, Morgan State week 1 at home, then on Texas A&M. Then you have the international game, and then a few weeks later, and then you have Hawaii at home, kind of sprinkled in with conference play, kind of like how the SEC does with some of their teams, is that Alabama hosts some FCS school in November for whatever reason. So this will be kind of similar to an extent, but
I've seen some rumorings that Hawaii could be moved to week 1. But again, we don't really know how this is all going to flesh out. Still waiting on the official confirmation that this is for sure happening. This can all be speculation for now until then. But it is worth noting that Arizona State has played on the road internationally once before in Tokyo. It was in the 1990 season, so I was all of coming up on 3 months old when this game was played. But we lost, ironically enough, to Houston, or not ironically enough, but to a future Big 12 opponent. Lost to Houston 62-45, and this could be an opportunity to even up the record if this does go through.
Yeah, I don't think 107 points will be scored in this game. I'll take the under there.
Yeah, when you're playing in a soccer stadium in England, take the under.
Well, now that we've completely gone down that rabbit hole, I want to close this episode out with our final score predictions for Saturday's game. Andrew, I'll go ahead and start with you. What's your prediction, and who are a couple of your players to watch for?
Yeah, I think this will be a very, like I said, kind of that medium-high scoring game. I'm going to say 30 in the 30s for both teams. I think Arizona State will pull off the victory. I don't know if you guys have the same thought. I'm going to go with 37-31 ASU. I wrote it down for me so I remember to send that in for our expert predictions, which will be on Devils in Detail at some point. I don't know when that comes out. That's David's thing. He's got that down. But regardless, 37-31, who I think will stand out is defensively. I'm going to start there. We've seen week week 1, week 3, Jordan Crook has had good games. Week 2 was Keyshawn Elliott, so the trend would be going back to Keyshawn Elliott for this week. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go something different. I am going to say CJ Fight has a breakout game. I think he's going to get a sack or two and just establish his presence in the middle. He's kind of established it a little bit, but he hasn't really. I don't think he's had a sack yet this season. Maybe a tackle for loss or two. Yes, he did have that forced fumble and recover fumble last game. But I think this is the time where he's going to have a multi-sack game. Offensively, I think I could go just say Jordan Tyson for the easy play, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go something a little bit different. I'm going to say we're going to see some passing. I just mentioned 25 to 30, I think is the range that we should expect. And I think they're going to go to the other guys in that stretch. And I think a lot of those targets are going to go to Malik McClain. I think Malik McClain is due for a game. He's been with the ones all year long. I don't think any drills with the twos. But he hasn't had that game that Tyson's had on the other side. I think he's primed for a breakout game outside of Tyson.
I like where you're going with that, Andrew. I had CJ Fight as well on my on defensive side there, so kudos to you. But I'll go different on offense. I think, why not? We're going to have a Shimon Mateo breakout game. I think we're going to have a little bit of a secret weapon usage here because they're going to key in on Tyson. I feel like Levitt's going to have to use a safety valve more often than not in this game if he's not able to go downfield. I think the running game is going to be the bread and butter for this, but there's going to be instances, I feel like, where they're going to have a 3rd and short, or they're going to have a 3rd and 4 type of situation, maybe on the other side of the field where you're not necessarily in field goal range yet, and Kenny's going to be in 4-down territory mode. I think you're going to see Shimon Mateo come up big in some of these moments where you got to have a conversion, or you got to have a safety valve for Sam to use when Jordan Tyson's covered up, when the running game may have been plugged earlier on the first 2 downs. So I think we're going to see that come for Mateo, and I think, we've already seen his pass blocking has been incredible so far. So I feel like he's the type of dude that could open up a heck of a lot more on offense for Sam. He could even open up the running game by protecting the edge a little bit better for the offensive line. So I that's where I'm going to go with this and see if that finally pans out for our guy. Overall in the game, I do believe I'm optimistic. I believe ASU is going to pull it out. I'm going to go 34-24 ASU. I think the defense is going to do just enough at just the right times to keep enough of a distance between ASU and Baylor, and I think the offense is going to click.
Well, as the ranking member of the Shimon Mateo fan club, you stole my thunder with your offensive player to watch, but I'm looking at Raleek Brown to be the star of the game on offense. I think that we are going to see him go for over 150 yards against a particularly porous Baylor run defense. And on defense, I'm looking at Boogie Wilson to step up and really show that he is the next man up for this secondary, and do everything that he can to shut down Baylor's passing game.
What's interesting, I'm going to interrupt you right for a minute, Tom, is Shimon Mateo actually had his career high in receptions last week with 6 against Texas State. So just throwing it out there, is that he got a lot of targets, so you might see more. I like where you guys are going, though.
But yeah, looking at Boogie Wilson to step it up on defense. For my final score, I've been going back and forth on this. I think we're going to see. I'm going to go with 41-34 38 Arizona State, and I'm going to throw a wrinkle into this one. I think we see an overtime game.
I like it.
I think we could see this game go to overtime. I don't think it goes past one overtime. I fingers crossed that Baylor has the ball first. We can stop them, and then we just go for the field goal to win it. That's my vision. That's what I'm going to be manifesting the next couple days before kickoff.
What's interesting is Baylor's coming off of a 14-point comeback win where they won in, I believe, double overtime. I think they went to that's right.
Double overtime against SMU week 2.
Yep. They're obviously like to play overtime games. We've seen it 1 for 3 this year, so maybe they go 2 for 4 in that, and this time they come out on the other side of defeat.
Well, this is shaping up to be an exciting week for the Big 12 opener. Don't forget to stay tuned to Devils in Detail for all the remaining coverage leading up to kickoff. Saturday's game will be at 4:30 p.m. Arizona time, broadcast on Fox, so we won't have to deal with any of that pesky ESPN Plus streaming issues. But I'm really excited for this game. I always love conference play. It's we've gotten through the warm up to the season. Now we're into the meat and potatoes, and this is where it really counts. This is for conference bragging rights. These are the games that matter. For Austen Bundy and Andrew Hayslett, I'm Tom Hardon. Thank you all for listening, and as always, forks up and go Devils.